Good morning. Today we've got a Mondeo ST220, a 2004 vintage, and the owner of this vehicle has asked me to upgrade the headlights from the halogen to the Ford OEM headlights. Now, the reason he wants the Ford OEM headlights is because A, they exist, and B, they generally are better. Retrofitting either LEDs or HIDs into halogens I would not recommend. If you're going to do that, at least use a projector conversion instead. They are just far better and far more legal, and yeah, but he wants to keep the stock look of the vehicle and wants it all to be reversible, so that's why we're doing it this way instead. Because it's an ST220, obviously it has a nice Duratec V6 in there, 3 litre, 220 horsepower, 223 in this instance. Now, although these headlights are some of the easiest to remove on any vehicle that I've worked on, converting them isn't necessarily as straightforward. To actually remove the headlight though, you'll see that there's these little tabs on the front grille. You twist them just a little bit and they pull out. There's 2 of them on either side, and then sometimes these have screws on the top. I've already removed it in this case just to save some time, and then they just slide out. Now, the headlight itself, it's actually quite easy. There's a tab here, you lift it up, and there's a tab here, you pull them up, and then the whole light just pulls out the front. It's very easy. Like I said, some of the easiest I've ever removed. You might be able to think we can just pop these straight in, and we can, but they won't work. And the reason they won't work is simple. The plug on the Xenon headlights is entirely different. You can just about see it's a very square connector and has many more contacts than the originals do. When you bought the Xenon headlight option when this car was new, you would actually change the entire engine loom to be a different specification so that it could support these headlights, because these are auto leveling. The dip beam actually requires 20 amps of current and a couple of other small little differences, but they're generally the same. Now, to actually convert the headlights over, we're going to need a couple of adapters. They look like this, at least this is the one I've made. This takes the original car's headlight plug and then converts it into the more square multi-way pins for the new headlight to go in. These cables are almost straight through adapters. By that I mean that the indicator pin on the old plug is connected straight through to the indicator pin on the new plug, etc. The only difference is the headlight leveling signal. On the original lights, it connects to the auto leveling ECU inside of the headlight. I've cut this wire inside the headlight and instead joined it to the motor's level signal directly. Also, I haven't connected the dip beam through. Now you'll notice that there's this little tag coming off. This is because the original wiring only supports around about 7-10 amps for the dip beam, and these Xenon units can use in excess of 15, sometimes up to 20 amps. So you could run it off the original wiring, but to keep it safe, I'm going to be making a patch loom that goes across the front panel to put use higher current wire to run the dip beam. So that's where the second part of this loom comes in. It looks very much like the first, same kind of 2-plug adapter, but you'll notice that it's got these 2 spade connectors coming off the end. It's also got these 2 spade connectors. Now what these are for is an external relay. This is a 40 amp relay, so we'll be able to run both headlights continuously. And the reason that we're using an external relay is just so that we can take some power from the battery, run it through the relay to run these lights directly. I'll show you how this connects up. Here we are around the battery, and what I'm going to do is just pull the tab at the front and lift this off. I'm surprised that this is still in good condition, and again, the owner of this car is an absolute fanatic with his vehicles, so it also doesn't surprise me. Ooh, sorry. You'll see here that I've already attached a high current wire to the battery positive. Now this hasn't got any fuse in it, so it's currently safe, although you shouldn't be touching those contacts. But it runs into this spade contact here. Now that spade contact goes into pin, I believe it's 3 of the relay. Yes, pin 3 of the relay. So it would attach like that, and then the other 3 connectors would attach onto the other side. And again, the reason we're doing this is just so that we have ample amount of current for running the HIDs. Some people struggles real with this car. Now you see some people changing the fuses here and here to 20 amp fuses. This is completely pointless because usually they'll use relays as well, which go straight to the battery positive. There is no point upgrading these fuses. The only device that runs through this fuse will be this relay. The relay is not going to use 7.5 amps, so it's not even going to be using an amp. So people upgrading these, unless you're running the headlights through the stock wiring, which I'm not sure is necessarily a good idea, you don't need to touch these, just leave them. Now as for how I'm going to install this system, I'm going to take out the other side headlight, or the near side headlight. Same process, 2 tabs. This one's a little more sticky, but it does come out. And then just attach the wiring. So obviously we've got our connector here, our, what was that, 7-pin square connector. I'm going to be referring to this cable, the near side cable, as the master loom, or the master headlight loom. Reason is because the original Ford auto leveling system, the near side headlight was the master headlight. It controls the right hand side headlight, so that's just the reason I'm going to call it that. So the way this system works, at least in my example, is I'm going to take this loom and I'm going to plug it into the near side headlight plug, and these 2 tags will go into my relay. The relay is a 4-prong 40 amp relay. It's just the standard Ford one I grabbed from a car being salvaged, and I'm just going to connect it into pins 1 and 2. It doesn't necessarily matter which way round they go around, as long as they're on pins 1 and 2, it's fine. I'm going to take the output to the headlights, I'm going to connect that to pin 5. And like that, when you turn on the headlights or the dip beam through the stock wiring, it'll turn the relay on, which will start supplying high current power to the headlights on both sides using the battery feed. Now I haven't connected the battery feed up just yet. I want to run this cable, this thick cable, across. And yes, I'm probably using excessively thick cable for this, but it's what I had around. Bloody hell, can all the cars stop going by? Apparently not. Right, so I'm going to run this along the front panel like so. I'm going to be using the standard clips that hold the coolant lines on. What I'm going to be doing as well is cable tying it to the existing wiring that runs to the front panel for the airbag and the bonnet lock sensor. That way, when we get over to the other side, it's all secure. It's not going to fall off into the fan or anything stupid like that. So I'm just going to run it over, like I said, using the built-in clips. I'm going to be using the slightly thinner clips, and this is flame proof cable, so if the vehicle caught fire, God forbid, or otherwise is rubbing against something that's very hot, it's not going to cause any issue. So always make sure that you use the appropriate wire for your intended purpose. Not the people that just don't, it's ridiculous. Right, now I'm going to go through and put some cable ties in to hold it even better. Cable ties? Yeah, I'm just going to cable tie it to the existing wiring that's already present. Just makes it easier, doesn't it? What I'm also going to do is put an extra cable tie around here, and this is just because the original clip that held the wire in is actually broken. I know this car's a good friend of mine, so I'm going to do what I can to help him out. What I'll probably do actually is I'll just remove that remnant, yeah, like that, so that the cable tie can go through this eyelet, and then you can just attach it like so. It's not hugely necessary, but it just makes me feel better. Now you'll no doubt be wondering why I've gone down this route, which is to not have a relay on this side, and that's because it's unnecessary. Other people who have done this have had these looms where they've got a relay this side, a relay on the near side, and then they've got a common power cable going between them. It's just not necessary. The one relay will happily provide both headlights with ample amount of power, and generally speaking they only need about 20 amps or up to 20 amps when they are starting, when they're igniting. After that they run at a lower voltage, so you don't need excessive amounts of components, and it just keeps it simpler. You just got this one wire to power, and then that's it. Right, so all we have to do now is to connect this side up. So you just connect it up, and then we'll connect these two together. If you really want to be professional, I put some heat shrink over these so it would prevent any ingress of any water. Failing that, however, what I do have is something that's easier to remove and will still do somewhat of a job to prevent water ingress, which is just a bit of electrical tape. It won't seal, that's not what electrical tape is supposed to do, it's supposed to insulate, but it'll help. So otherwise these connectors will just soak up any water or moisture and corrode from the inside out. Doing it like this means that it can be removed fairly easily, but whilst it's in place it'll do the job. And on this side we now have the connector. Right, with the adapter now in place, all we have to do is connect up this side of the loom like so, and just fit the headlight, and there we go. The offside is now HID. Now before we can put the headlight on, and on this side we first of all need to connect our battery feed to pin 3 of the relay. That way it's all connected. In fact, what I'm going to do is take that off and I'll run it through like so, just so that this can move around a bit. Now the reason that this is all jumbled up together, it might seem like it's be a pain to connect onto the headlight, but the headlight itself has a trail of wire coming off, and it goes down into this little area, so this can all just sit neatly out of the way. So this can all sit down, something like that, and I can cable tie it down and stuff like that. I think the reason that Ford did that is because there's so little space behind here. They couldn't put the connector on, hence why they've had these tags that you remove to pull the headlight out forward to change the bulbs. Although you can change the bulbs very easily on the HIDs because they've put T20 screws, probably because they don't want regular folk from just taking the HID bulbs out and managing to electrocute themselves with 1200 volts. Having just said about cable tying things up, I'm going to do that here now whilst I've got the opportunity to. I'm going to do that the right way around. And if you're wondering about vibrations and whether it's going to cause any problems, I am too. Another thing I don't like is the fact that this battery lead might chafe against the metal. This is why I've put the fuse right by the battery terminal, so even if it does chafe, all it's going to do is just blow a fuse. Yeah, sure, you won't have your headlights, but it's at least not going to cause a fire. In fact, I'm going to put it around here like that. That way it's less likely to rub or chafe against anything. And then this plug down here can just like so. Now we can put the near side light in. Here's that tag I was saying about. I don't know if it's, like I said, just because there's no space, but it does allow me to just run the headlight into my little adapter loom I've just stowed away, and there we go. Headlights don't seem to fit on this side nearly as well, and we just put our tags in. There we go. Now the last step we're going to need to do is to put a fuse in for the actual dip beam focus. I'm using 35 amp in this case. I should really be using a 40 amp. It just quite simply goes into place right here, and I can just put that out of the way. Oh, that's loose. It's not about the size that you've got, it's how you use it. Now, like I said before, we don't need to change these two fuses down here because we're only running relays. So this fuse cover simply, and I say simply, goes back into place. Simply, and so does the battery cover. There we go. Looks like nothing was ever there. You might be able to see just how little space there actually is behind the headlight, so I'm not surprised that they put on the little tag. I mean, inside of the vehicle. We're going to do a light test to make sure everything's working, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to start the engine up. I don't necessarily know whether or not the battery will hold up to a light test, and in my car it doesn't. So always check it's in neutral. Handbrake is on. Oof, doesn't it sound nice? Right, so with the engine now running, hazards go on, dip beam goes on. Ooh, power steering's cold, it's quite chilly out today. And full beam goes on. Should always be all we need to see. Right, so as you saw, the dip was working, the indicator was working, but the side and the high beam wasn't. So, like with any bulb change on a Mondeo, you just have to pull the tags back out. Pull the headlight out. Now I'm not going to unplug it because I've got all the space I need to have a look at the high beam. The side light I don't actually need to take the back cover off to get to. Anyway, I'll show you the side light first because I already know what the problem is. So why might I already know what the problem is? Well, take another look at the other side again. Do you notice something funny about the way that bulb looks? Yeah, it's an LED bulb. Now most of the times with an LED bulb, at least LED 501, what tends to be true more often than not is they are not what I would like to say unipolarized, otherwise meaning that the bulb does not work in both directions. Because a LED bulb has, well, apparently in this instance it's barely connected. It'll only work in one way. So the simplest way is to turn it around and see if it now works. Right, the side lights are now on, but it's still not working. So what I'm going to do is turn it around again. And it's still not working. Oh, would you look at that? An LED bulb that doesn't work. How shocking. Right, just to satisfy my own curiosity, I'm going to bend these leads out. The reason I'm doing this is because I believe this bulb has failed. So we bend the leads out like that, and then we'll be able to pull the LED itself through. And actually, to be fair, the resistors are still attached, they're puny, and these bulbs are generally crap, but they're still attached. So why are you not working? I mean, the bulb could still be failed. There's always that. Yeah. Let's go and get an actual 501 bulb, shall we? Okay, I lied. I've got another LED bulb. This is what was originally in the old headlights anyway, so I'll just be using that. It almost looks like they've marked the polarity on it. Now on the headlight wiring, you'll see this orange cable. That's actually the 12 volt. So if I flip that around, there we go. So just put that back in the light holder and put the cover back on, and that's that problem solved. Now to get to the high beam, you have to use a T20 screw because there's one up the top and one down the bottom, and I'm going to be using this inappropriately long T20 screwdriver to do that. So what we can do is take apart this screw here, or should I say take out, and then there's one, I believe. And now once you've got those idiot-proof screws out, should be able to unlatch the top, and we'll see what's going on with this bulb. Now there is a high voltage component here. This does run at 1200 volts, so don't touch it when it's running, but I'm not going to. Right, let's have a look. My filament's all good. I'm flicking it because if you flick a bulb and you hear a twang, you know it's bad, but it seems good to me. So why is that not working? Maybe it was just a bad connection. Let's just plug the cable back in, like so, and I'll go quickly turn the vehicle back on and check the high beam again. Well, the high beam should be on about now, but it's not on. interesting. Well, there you go. Just because it looks good, sounds good, doesn't always mean it is good. Now, I know you'll have some questions about this. First of all, is this legal? The answer is it depends. Now, I can't say whether or not in your country, your region, whether or not it's going to be legal to put HIDs into a non-HID vehicle. But in the UK at the very least, HID lights must be E-marked. Now, because we've put the original factory headlights in, these are E-marked headlights, so these are legal in themselves. The second requirement is HID headlights need to have washers. Now these work, so there you go, that's also legal. The only issue is when you talk about the leveling system. Now I've modified both these headlights so that the leveling system works for this vehicle, but they're not auto leveling, so that's the only issue. But without extensive modifications to the vehicle, that's not possible. The only other thing I would say is that on this I would have rather put at least a 40 amp fuse on the main battery terminal and then put two 20 amp fuses behind each headlight. I didn't do that just because of time reasons, but I might come back and do that in a future part. After all, the headlight looms are separable, so I can just put a fuse in line of them. In any case, I hope you've enjoyed watching, and if you have any questions, then ask them down in the comments, and thank you for watching.